Amidst the vastness of Texas, a young boy named Gregory sprouted in a cradle made of flour and love. The only child of a humble couple who had given up hope of hearing a baby's cry in their home, Gregory was a ray of sunshine in a cloudy sky, a blessing to his parents. His birth was a celebration, an unexpected breath of life interwoven into the fabric of their simple, hard-working existence. Despite their modest circumstances, his parents strived to shape his education, wishing for him to rise above the rustic life they had known. Gregory grew up surrounded by sacks of flour and the cozy aroma of fresh bread. The bakery was a quaint little establishment, always filled with the warmth of ovens and the laughter of his parents. His father, a skilled and dedicated baker, used the art of bread-making as a vehicle to impart life's most valuable lessons to his son. He taught Gregory about the importance of patience, watching the yeast work its magic, of perseverance, kneading the dough until it reached the perfect consistency, and of gratitude, with every loaf sold to their loyal customers. As Gregory transformed from a boy into a young man, his mastery of the baking craft grew as well. He absorbed his father's skills like a sponge, innovating and bringing new flavors to the bakery. Eventually, he inherited his father's bakery and guided the family business toward a bright future. Gregory's life was a harmonious dance of flour, yeast, and fire. He carried his father's bakery forward, and with every loaf he baked, every customer he served, he paid homage to his parents' love and dedication. The bakery was not just a means of subsistence, it was an expression of gratitude, legacy, and love. And so, Gregory, the boy from Texas, grew up amidst bread in the bakery, building his future with the same patience and dedication he employed in shaping each loaf. At the dawn of his maturity, Gregory crossed paths with a charming young woman named Claire. With her caramel-colored hair dancing in the Texas breeze and bright blue eyes that shone like the midday sky, Claire embodied beauty that carried with it a simple and gentle grace. At first glance, Gregory knew she was unlike any other. "Claire," he said one day, as they sat beneath the grand oak tree shading the town square, "you are like the sun. Not just because you are bright and beautiful, but because you make me feel alive." Over time, a deep bond of affection and fondness wove between the two, evolving into an overwhelming feeling they couldn't deny. They shared laughter and tears, stories and dreams, and together, they explored the meaning of love. Their nighttime walks under the starry expanse of the Texas sky, their intimate conversations in the cozy embrace of the bakery, the complicity in their gazes, everything spoke of a love story unfolding. After several years of dating, where each moment reaffirmed their love, Gregory decided to ask Claire for her hand in marriage. Kneeling on Claire's porch, under a starlit sky, he said, "Claire, by your side, I've discovered the true meaning of love. Would you spend the rest of your life with me, sharing dreams, bread, and laughter?" With a radiant smile and tears of joy in her eyes, Claire nodded, sealing their fate. They married in a beautiful outdoor ceremony, under the same oak tree where he had confessed his feelings, surrounded by the adoration and warmth of their small Texas community. And so, Gregory, the boy from Texas who grew up in his father's bakery, found the love of his life. Together, they continued the story of the boy and the bakery, adding another page to their family's legacy. Years later, a dark misfortune slid over the family. Gregory's father, already bowed under the weight of age and marked by lines of experience and wisdom, succumbed to the inevitable cycle of life. One morning, in his old armchair next to the oven where he had taught Gregory the art of kneading bread, he exhaled his final breath. "Mother, father is gone," Gregory said, his eyes clouded with unrestrained tears, as he entered the room where his mother sat. "He is at peace now, resting." Sadness filled the room like a silent storm, and his mother, a woman of small stature but immense heart, seemed to shrink further, the contained shock in her brown eyes. "I knew this day would come, my son," she replied, her voice steady despite the heaviness. "But still, it doesn't feel real. Your father, he was my world. The death of his father sent a wave of sorrow that deeply shook the family and the community that adored him. The bakery, once a center of joy and laughter, fell into a profound silence, as if the very building mourned the loss of the baker. Not long after, Gregory's mother, unable to bear the pain of loss and devoid of the vital spark that once shone within her, also bid farewell to the world. After her husband's death, it seemed that a part of her had been lost, the sparkle in her eyes diminished, and not long after, on a cold winter night, she joined him. And so, tragedy befell Gregory and Claire, leaving them without the warm and loving presence of Gregory's parents. Though torn apart by grief, they found solace in each other, determined to honor Gregory's parents and continue the legacy they had built in that small Texas bakery. Amidst the storm of sorrows, Gregory and Claire found shelter in each other. Their days were filled with both of them attempting to gather the pieces of their lives and put them back together. It was a difficult journey, but they had each other as bastions in the storm, support in moments of weakness. On a serene night, under a star-studded sky, Gregory held Claire's hand and said, "Despite everything, Claire, I am happy. Happy to have you by my side." Claire, the soft moonlight illuminating her face, smiled at him, her eyes shining with love and hope. "And I am happy to have you, Gregory. We have to move forward, don't we?" In that small bakery in the heart of Texas, a new story was about to begin. The couple's joy was complemented by wonderful news that Claire shared with Gregory on a golden autumn morning. "Gregory," she said, a mixture of nervousness and excitement in her voice, I'm pregnant." The news fell upon Gregory like a cool breeze in the desert. He embraced her tightly, joy flooding his face as tears of happiness sparkled in his eyes. "We're going to have a baby, Claire. We're going to be parents." And so, hope blossomed in their hearts once again. They found out they were expecting a boy and decided, together, to name him Tom. A tribute to Gregory's paternal grandfather, the man who had started the bakery, a family legacy now passing on to a new generation. The wait was long and filled with anticipation, but for Gregory and Claire, each day brought new joy and a fresh chance to live and love. The happiness that bloomed in Gregory's life took an abrupt and painful turn. The long-awaited arrival of Tom was accompanied by an atmosphere of joy and anticipation. However, fate, in its relentless cruelty, cast a dark shadow over what should have been a moment of pure happiness. The sharing of the news came from the trembling lips of Dr. Mitchell, the obstetrician. He was an elderly man, with hands that had delivered countless lives into the world. That night, however, those experienced hands felt heavy, and his face marked by wrinkles carried a somber and sorrowful look. "Gregory," he began, his voice hoarse and low, "we did everything within our power." "Everything." The expression on Gregory's face oscillated between confusion and growing fear, like a storm forming on the horizon. He swallowed hard, feeling his heart pounding violently in his chest. What do you mean, doctor?" he asked, fearing the answer. Dr. Mitchell sighed deeply, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Claire, and the baby. They didn't make it." It was as if the ground beneath Gregory's feet gave way. A silent scream formed in his throat as he felt the reality of the situation engulf him. Loss, so familiar and yet completely new, took hold of him, the love of his life and his long-awaited child, taken away from him in a cruel twist of fate. His eyes, once filled with joy and hope, were now flooded with despair and pain, the image of a man who had lost everything he loved once again. In the wake of such devastating tragedy, Gregory found himself confronted with a reality that seemed overwhelming. The dawn that he used to greet with a smile now appeared gray and cold. The grains of wheat, the scent of yeast, and the warmth of the oven, once comforting and full of happy memories, now served as poignant reminders of all that he had lost. He remained steadfast, rooted in the daily routine of running the bakery, his family's legacy. His once agile and precise fingers, kneading dough, now moved slowly, heavily, while his gaze lost in the horizon carried a glimmer of deep sadness. The challenges were many, the nights were long, and the days seemed even longer. The bakery was now both his salvation and his torment. The thought of marrying again never crossed his mind. The love he felt for Claire burned intensely in his chest, an unquenchable fire that constantly reminded him of the void she left. There was no space for another woman in his heart, as Claire filled every corner of it, even in her absence. It was as if he carried an invisible cross of pain and loss, the unbearable longing for his beloved wife and the child he never had the chance to know. This sorrow permeated his being, an indelible mark of a love as deep as the pain that now plagued him. Gregory continued to walk the path of his life, one step at a time, carrying the memory of Claire and Tom, keeping them alive in his heart. Gregory sought refuge in the familiarity of work, in the meticulous routine of kneading, shaping, and baking, in an effort to dull the pain he carried in his chest. The early mornings found Gregory in the silence of the bakery, lost among sacks of flour and yeast, as he strived to create the bread that was the essence of his family legacy. However, the passage of time brought changes not only to Gregory's life but also to the world around him. The townspeople, once enamored with the unmatched texture and flavor of the artisanal bread offered by Gregory's bakery, began to seek quicker and cheaper alternatives, abandoning the delicacy of the handmade process. The competition from supermarkets and pre-packaged breads grew day by day, making the maintenance of the bakery an uphill battle. The glimmer of profits that once illuminated the path of Gregory's endeavor began to fade, gradually giving way to financial darkness. The sound of the cash register, once constant, was replaced by the piercing silence of a declining business. With each passing day, the burden of keeping the bakery open weighed heavier on his shoulders, and the harsh reality of the market became increasingly evident. Clutching onto hope until the end, Gregory fought against the tide. However, there came a point where even the most persistent flame must accept the cold gust of the wind. The alternative he had avoided for so long became inevitable. With a heavy heart, inundated by a mix of sadness and resignation, Gregory made the painful decision to close the doors of the bakery, a tangible symbol of his family legacy and a love that would remain unshaken by adversity. In the post-apocalypse of the bakery, Gregory found a job at a nearby factory. His once skillful hands, adept at shaping bread artistically, now adapted to the harshness of machines and the inhumane rhythm of the production line. The bakery remained in his heart, but the factory kept his body alive, sustaining him through hard but honest work. For nearly 2 decades, Gregory devoted himself to the sterile mechanics of the industry. His life became an unvarying cycle of mundane tasks. However, the security he found in this monotony was abruptly interrupted when the factory began downsizing its workforce. "Gregory," said the manager, with an expression desperately trying to balance professionalism and sympathy, "we need to make some adjustments," and, unfortunately, the news of the layoff fell like a sentence. With no viable alternatives, Gregory turned to an emergency fund he had cautiously accumulated over the years, while facing the daunting task of searching for a new job. However, at the age of 50, the job market became an unforgiving jungle. His gray hair and the experience it symbolized were considered more of a hindrance than an asset. "We're looking for someone younger, Gregory," hiring managers would say, with falsely sympathetic smiles and looks filled with unspoken apologies. Caught at the crossroads of age and necessity, Gregory continued to seek an opportunity, facing the deafening silence of a phone that rarely rang and the disheartening gazes of those who considered his life experience irrelevant. The tide of misfortunes finally crashed against Gregory, resulting in the cruelest blow of all, the loss of his home. With bills piling up and his financial reserve now depleted, he could no longer afford the rent for the modest apartment he called home. Despite all his effort and sacrifice, he had never managed to buy a house of his own. As Gregory's belongings were tossed onto the street by the indifferent landlord, a glimmer of memory flickered in his mind, offering a ray of hope amidst the chaos. Years ago, his father had bequeathed him a small house, more of a shack, really, in an outskirts area of the city. Gregory had never paid much attention to this inheritance, knowing that renovating it would cost more than he could afford. The house remained forgotten, preserved only as a vague memory. But now, Gregory's situation had changed. Out of all the options he didn't have, that rundown little house was his only way out. With no alternative, he gathered his belongings and set off for the only property he owned, the shack his father had left behind, a ramshackle structure squatting in the vastness of the city outskirts. It was a forced choice, but a choice that meant the difference between having a roof over his head and sleeping on the streets. Gregory then settled into his new home, that fragile and forgotten shack. Though he carried a heavy cloak of sadness for the loss of nearly everything that meant something to him in life, he recognized the need to adapt to this new reality. Each day was a new battle, and he was determined to face each one with resilience. Over time, he discovered a side of the small house he had not considered before. As modest as the structure was, it had one valuable feature, a surprisingly spacious backyard, a true green oasis that extended beyond the eyesight, painting a picture of possibility in Gregory's mind. With hands calloused from years of working in the bakery factory, Gregory began transforming the vast backyard into a productive garden. He planted seeds of various vegetables, which soon blossomed into a rich green tapestry, bringing life to the shack and hope to Gregory's heart. Over time, Gregory's crops matured, and he decided to take the fruits of his labor to the town market. Every day, he woke up early and carried his heavy baskets filled with fresh vegetables, traveling to the town square to sell his harvest. It wasn't a fortune he made, far from it. But the sale of the vegetables provided Gregory with enough to cover his basic expenses. More than that, it gave him a new purpose and the feeling that, despite all the adversities, he was still capable of creating something valuable with his own hands. 2 long years unfolded since Gregory began his new life in that shack. Mornings were dedicated to tending to his plants, while afternoons were occupied by selling his crops in the town square. It was in this rhythm that he managed to carry on, one day at a time. One day, as the sunlight began to spread across the sky, he arrived at the square to start his sales as usual. But this time, an unexpected figure occupied the spot where he always set up his stand. A young man, around 22 years old, was sleeping there, huddled against the morning chill. Gregory's initial impression was that the young man was just another town drunkard, but upon closer observation, he noticed that he didn't look like one. Although clearly homeless, there was a certain cleanliness and care in his appearance, an incongruity that caught the attention of the older man. Not wanting to wake him or confront him, Gregory chose to move his stand to a nearby spot, setting up there and continuing with his sales. The day proceeded like any other, with Gregory keeping a watchful eye on the young man who continued to sleep in his old spot. Customers came and went, the sun traversed the sky, and hours passed, but Gregory remained vigilant, observing the young man. The young man, in turn, remained motionless, deep in slumber, even amidst the noise and bustle of the market around him. As the shadows of dusk began to lengthen and the activity in the square started to dwindle, Gregory decided to do something for the sleeping young man. He passed by one of the local food vendors, purchasing a modest sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. He placed everything in a small paper bag, intending to offer it to the stranger. With the bag in hand, Gregory approached the young man, his footsteps echoing on the stone pavement of the square. The young man, however, continued to sleep, oblivious to the movement around him. Drawing closer, Gregory crouched down beside him and lightly touched his shoulder. "Boy," he gently called, "you need to wake up." The young man startled awake, his eyes wide with fear and confusion as they focused on Gregory for a moment before darting to his surroundings. Gregory kept his hands visible and his voice calm, trying to convey that he meant no harm. "I brought you something to eat," Gregory explained, extending the bag towards the young man. "It's not much, but it will sustain you for a while." The young man stared at him for a moment, his gaze alternating between Gregory's face and the offered bag. After a brief silence, Gregory placed the bag beside the young man and stood up, leaving the offering without pressuring him. "I must go now," Gregory said, "but I hope you enjoy the meal." With those words, he walked away, leaving the young man with the food and uncertainty in his eyes as he made his way back to his modest home. The new day dawned with a biting cold. The wind howled around the corners, and ice covered the rooftops. Well bundled up, Gregory ventured out for another day of work in the town square. To his surprise, he found the young man huddled in the same spot again, protected only by his tattered clothes. Throughout the day, Gregory watched the young man from his stand, seeing him try to keep warm by shaking his arms and rubbing his hands together. When the twilight painted the sky orange, Gregory decided to take action. Inside his rustic bag was a thick blanket that he kept for himself in case of emergencies. However, the young man seemed to need it more at that moment. As the activities in the square came to an end, Gregory gathered his belongings and approached the young man. The young man looked at him with slightly less fear this time, perhaps recognizing the friendly face that had offered him food the previous day. "It's cold, isn't it?" Gregory began, looking at the young man. "And it seems the nights are getting colder." The young man simply nodded, his curious eyes observing Gregory. "I brought this for you," Gregory said, handing the folded blanket to the young man, who took it with hesitant hands. "It's not much, but it should help keep you warm during the night." The young man remained silent for a moment before finally murmuring a timid thank you. "Thank you, sir." Gregory simply smiled, giving the young man a light pat on the shoulder. "Stay warm, lad. And try to take care of yourself," he advised before stepping away, leaving the young man with the blanket and the kindness he had shown. The following morning arrived, bringing with it the golden glow of the sun that illuminated the town square. Gregory arrived early, as usual, but noticed the absence of the young man who had occupied the corner near his stand. He assumed the young man, who appeared to be a wanderer, had moved on, seeking new horizons. However, a peculiar movement caught his attention. Near the dumpsters lining the square, the blanket Gregory had given to the young man the previous day seemed to have a life of its own, moving strangely. Intrigued and concerned, Gregory decided to investigate the situation. As he approached, the image that unfolded was shocking. The young man, his face bruised and body marked by recent bruises, huddled beneath the blanket, trembling in pain. It appeared that he had been brutally assaulted. "Oh my God, what happened to you, lad?" Gregory exclaimed, concern tinting his voice as he knelt beside the young man. The young man tried to speak, but his words came out weak and breathless, interrupted by pain. It was clear that he needed help, and quickly. Gregory wasted no time, acting immediately to assist the young man, his own loneliness and hardships forgotten in the face of the urgent need of the moment. With a heavy heart for the young man's condition, Gregory helped him to his feet, supporting him carefully. He led him to the nearest hospital, his steps steady despite his mind being in turmoil. The doctors acted swiftly, taking the injured young man to receive the necessary care. While waiting in the waiting room, Gregory was taken aback when the young man, now stabilized and sitting on a hospital bed, looked at him with gratitude in his brown eyes. "My name is Gabriel," he said, his voice still weak but determined. Gabriel then began to share his story, a tale of loss and despair. His parents, he said, were caretakers on a farm, and he lived with them until their premature deaths. The farm owner, indifferent to Gabriel's situation, did not allow him to continue living on the property. Deprived of any resources or support, Gabriel found himself forced to live on the streets. The previous night, while rummaging through the trash for something to eat, a gang of wealthy and callous young men in their luxurious cars approached him. Driven by cruelty and boredom, they brutally assaulted him, leaving him injured and abandoned. Gabriel's story deepened the knot that had formed in Gregory's stomach. Even amidst his own pain and hardships, he felt a surge of compassion for Gabriel, a young man who, like him, had been brutally struck by life's twists and turns. Gregory, looking at Gabriel, felt a sharp pang in his heart. Something deeper than compassion, perhaps a connection or a calling, told him that he should help this young man. Thus, he made a decision that would change their lives forever. He approached the hospital bed, the expression on his face reflecting the seriousness of his offer. "Gabriel," he began, his voice firm and resolute, "I have a home. It's not much, but it's a safe and warm place. You could spend the night there if you want. There's no need to spend another night on the streets, especially after what happened." Gabriel, still in the hospital bed, looked at Gregory with a mix of surprise and hesitation in his eyes. He seemed on the verge of refusing, fear clearly visible on his face. But at the same time, the reluctance to face another night in the cold and brutal streets, subject to further assaults, was evident. After a long moment of silence, Gabriel nodded his head, fear in his eyes slowly being replaced by a glimmer of relief and gratitude. I accept," he replied, his voice almost a whisper. "Thank you so much, Gregory. You don't know how much this means to me." A new day dawned, and with it, a new journey began for Gregory and Gabriel. Gabriel, overwhelmed with gratitude for having spent the night in a safe and warm place, insisted on accompanying Gregory to the square to assist with selling the vegetables. Though still a little bruised, he was determined to show his appreciation through actions. He was a young man, full of vitality and unquestionable charisma. His eyes radiated an infectious sparkle, and his smile was so welcoming that even from a distance, it caught people's attention. And so, they set off, side by side, Gregory with his baskets of fresh vegetables and Gabriel carrying his gratitude and willingness to help. As they arrived at the square, Gabriel wasted no time in approaching passers-by. "Good morning," he exclaimed with almost tangible joy. "Have you tried the freshest vegetables in town? Come and see at Mr. Gregory's stand." His radiant smile, combined with his friendly approach, drew people to Gregory's stand, eliciting genuine interest. Gabriel seemed to have a natural talent for it, and unknowingly, he was breathing new life into Gregory's business. That day, the two of them had a resounding success in selling the vegetables. Well before lunchtime, all their baskets were empty, every cucumber, every cabbage, every pumpkin had found a new home. Gregory looked at Gabriel with profound gratitude and, with a soft voice, expressed his appreciation. "Thank you, Gabriel. We did it because of you." They decided to celebrate the triumph of the day with a classic home activity, baking a cake. Together, they measured, mixed, baked, and finally savored a delicious masterpiece of fluffy batter and creamy frosting. The laughter and shared stories that night filled the small house with warmth and joy. With Gabriel's invaluable presence, Gregory's stand transformed. Sales not only doubled but tripled. His once large and empty yard was now filled with green sprouts, growing with the potential for a new harvest. Gabriel devoted himself, sowing the land and caring for the plants with meticulous care that revealed an innate talent for farming. Moreover, Gabriel became a helping hand in Gregory's house. He assisted in necessary repairs and improvements, transforming it from a mere shelter into a true, comfortable, and welcoming home. Every hammered nail, every replaced wooden board, every freshly painted wall reflected the respect and care they were beginning to feel for each other. As the days went by, their relationship deepened. A paternal bond emerged between Gregory and Gabriel. Care, advice, and lessons were shared, and what started as a chance encounter of assistance became a relationship akin to that of a father and son. They found in each other a family they didn't expect to find, yet it became a balm for their souls. 3 years floated like leaves in the wind, and throughout that time, Gregory and Gabriel wove a tapestry of life together, filled with happiness and contentment. The young man, with his energy and charisma, breathed new life into Gregory's once solitary existence. There were moments when Gregory looked at Gabriel and felt a touch of fate. He saw glimpses of a life that could have been the life of his son, Tom. In his mind, he saw the resemblance in their features, in their laughter, and even in their way of thinking. He silently said to himself, "If my Tom were here, I'm sure it would be like this." It was a thought he shared with Gabriel on a starry night, as they sat in the garden after a day of work. "You know, Gabriel," Gregory began, looking up at the sky, "sometimes, when I look at you, it's as if I'm looking at my son, Tom. You've brought a new sense of purpose to my life." Gabriel, with an open heart, felt a wave of emotion. He cherished Gregory more than words could express. To him, Gregory was the paternal figure he had tragically lost. He looked at Gregory, his eyes shimmering in the moonlight, and responded sincerely, "And you, Gregory, have become the family I lost. I have immense gratitude for everything you've done for me." Both, in their mutual affection, found on that night a profound recognition of their connection, further solidifying the bond between them. It was a connection that united them not only as friends but as a family. On a morning like any other, Gabriel awoke to the birdsong in the garden. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, he called out to Gregory for breakfast, as he did every day. However, this time, an uncomfortable silence reverberated through the house. "Gregory?" Gabriel called again, his tone of voice growing slightly more uncertain. His mind began to spin with worries. Finally, he made his way to Gregory's room, his heart pounding in his chest. Gregory lay on the bed, his chest rising and falling slowly and irregularly. Gabriel approached, a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. He placed a hand on Gregory's shoulder, gently shaking him. "Gregory, are you okay?" The words caught in Gabriel's throat as Gregory slowly opened his eyes. They were dull eyes, devoid of the usual sparkle they used to carry. He spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper, a mere shadow of the robust and vibrant tone Gabriel knew. "Boy. I'm feeling a bit weak." Alarm bells rang in Gabriel's mind, the word ambulance instantly crossing his thoughts. With trembling fingers, he quickly dialed the emergency number on his phone, his gaze never leaving Gregory's pale face. He felt a wave of fear and concern, but above all, a determination to help the person who had become his family. The cold hospital light reflected on the somber expressions of their faces as the doctor delivered the unsettling diagnosis. Gregory needed heart surgery, an operation whose cost was beyond what the two could afford. Gabriel's heart sank, leaving him with a sense of overwhelming helplessness. "Is there anything we can do? Any payment plan, anything?" Gabriel pleaded, his hands clutching the doctor's apron with desperate strength. The doctor's words, however, were a cruel touch of reality. With teary eyes and a heavy heart, Gabriel made a choice, one that would confront ghosts from his past. He boarded the afternoon bus to the countryside, contemplating the memories each landmark brought. The bus stopped in front of a familiar estate, a vast farm that stretched as far as the eye could see. Gabriel's feet felt heavy as lead as he walked along the gravel road towards the main house. The magnificence of the mansion was overwhelming, reminding him of the gaping difference between their worlds. His heart pounded as he approached the carved wooden door. After a deep breath, mustering his courage, he raised his hand and knocked on the door. Each knock resonated through the stillness of the air, announcing his presence and marking the beginning of a confrontation with his past. The door swung open, and suddenly, a middle-aged woman with silver hair and a gentle face lit up in pure relief and joy. She was dressed in a housekeeper's uniform, a pristine white apron against her simple black dress. Delilah, the housekeeper who had helped raise Gabriel, stood before him after all these years. "Gabriel? Is it really you, boy?" she whispered, incredulous. In an instant, her eyes filled with tears, and she lunged forward, pulling the young man into a tight embrace. "Oh, my God! You're back! We've missed you so much." The revelation was overwhelming. The boy who slept in the square and sold vegetables in the city, whose life had intertwined with Gregory's, was, in fact, Gabriel Marshall. Son of Connor and Eliza Marshall, the wealthiest and most influential farmers in Texas. He was the rightful heir to all the land, cattle, and fortune that the estate held. Gabriel had spent his childhood and adolescence amidst the vast green fields and the warm embrace of the Marshall mansion. But a series of unfortunate events and impulsive decisions diverted him from the intended path, launching him on an unexpected and challenging trajectory. The patriarch of the Marshall family, Connor, succumbed to a voracious and destructive cancer, leaving behind a vast farm and a broken heart, that of his wife, Eliza. The loss of her life's love plunged Eliza into a pit of despair and loneliness from which she seemed to have no escape. Some time later, a new face appeared on the Marshall farm, Derek. He had a charming smile and gentle manners that won over Eliza's vulnerable heart. However, Gabriel, always observant and perceptive, sensed something sinister behind that charming facade. He detected the hidden greed in Derek's eyes, the way he looked at the property, and the way he treated Eliza when he thought no one was watching. However, whenever Gabriel tried to alert his mother, Derek's words were more convincing. Blinded by neediness and seduction, Eliza always chose to stand by his side, leading to intense conflicts between her son and the suitor. Despite his good intentions, Gabriel always ended up as the villain in the story, while Derek continued to be the hero in Eliza's eyes. One day, the tension between Gabriel and Derek escalated into an explosive confrontation. Amid accusations and resentments, words flew like poison darts. Driven by concern for his mother, Gabriel confronted Derek with the truth about his dark intentions. However, Derek, a skilled manipulator, turned the situation to his advantage. He painted Gabriel as the villain, a rebellious and disrespectful young man who was disturbing the family's peace. With tears in his eyes and a trembling voice, he said to Eliza, "I love you, Eliza. And I only want what's best for us. But your son, he's making it impossible. He doesn't respect me, he doesn't respect our happiness." Vulnerable and manipulated, Eliza succumbed to Derek's words. With a broken heart, she made the decision to kick her own son out of the house. "I love you, Gabriel. But you need to understand. Derek and I need peace too," were her final words to her son. Thus, Gabriel found himself alone, without a home or family. He arrived at the city square, where he started sleeping outdoors. The weight of the past still burdened his shoulders, but he was afraid to confront it, to relive the pain and sadness. So, he decided to remain discreet, hiding his true identity. And it was in that square that he encountered Gregory. He didn't disclose the truth to the kind man who welcomed him, fearing that the past would catch up to him and ruin the second chance he had found. The boy who once slept in a luxurious room exchanged his life for the simplicity of a cottage. Despite Delilah's relieved and emotional smile upon reuniting with Gabriel, she brought dark news. With a mournful tone, she informed the young man that recent events were not promising. Entering the grand hall, Gabriel found Derek, lounging in one of the leather armchairs with an arrogant smile on his face. The man, brimming with boundless conceit, indifferently announced that Eliza, Gabriel's mother, had passed away. He also proclaimed that the immense fortune and properties, once belonging to her, were now his. "Derek," Gabriel protested, looking at the man basking in glory in the family's room, "what have you done?" Derek merely laughed, a cold and cruel laughter. "Guards," he called out. Instantly, two imposing men entered the room, grabbed Gabriel by the arms, and led him out of the mansion. Derek's expression, filled with triumph and malice, was the last thing Gabriel saw before being expelled from his own home. However, before being led outside, Delilah quickly caught up with him and placed a small card in his hands. With a worried expression, she whispered to him, "Eliza is alive, Gabriel. Derek is lying. She is being treated at this clinic." She pointed to the printed name on the card. "Go there. She needs you now more than ever." Gabriel, carrying worry and fear with him, hurried to the clinic indicated by Delilah. Stepping through the automatic doors of the hospital, a sense of urgency settled in his chest. Once inside, he made his way to his mother's room. Upon entering the room, he found Eliza, visibly weak, lying in the hospital bed. Her expression, upon seeing Gabriel, was one of surprise and relief. "Gabriel, my son." Eliza managed to say, her voice trembling but clearly happy. He approached, gently took her hand, and said, "Mother, I'm here." "What happened?" Eliza recounted her story. She explained that after Gabriel's expulsion, she was deeply distraught. The suspicion arose when she began feeling constantly confused and disoriented. She believed that Derek had been administering medication without her knowledge to make her appear unstable. "He was always so careful, Gabriel. Always insisting that I needed to take my medication for my health," Eliza said, her gaze lost in the memory. "And it was in that state that I granted him power of attorney. I thought I was doing the right thing, taking care of the farm. I didn't know. I didn't know." Her words trailed off into a sob. Gabriel tightened his grip on her hand, offering her the silent support that only a son could provide. Gabriel's expression turned serious as he began relaying Gregory's situation. He spoke about the urgent and expensive surgery that the older man needed, and how time was running out. "Mother, I need money to pay for the surgery. Gregory, he's like a father to me," Gabriel said, the urgency clear in his eyes. Eliza, despite her weakness, managed a nod of understanding and informed Gabriel about a savings account she had maintained all these years, untouched and accruing interest. "There is a savings account, Gabriel. I never touched it, and there's enough money. Use it to help your friend, my son," Eliza said, providing him with the necessary information to access the account. Without wasting time, Gabriel followed his mother's instructions and managed to withdraw the necessary funds. With the funds in hand, he rushed back to the hospital where Gregory was admitted and managed to pay for the operation in time. Gregory underwent the surgery, and to everyone's relief, the operation was a success. Upon waking up, he felt better and stronger. Gabriel, sitting by his bedside, smiled in relief as he saw the man who had become a father figure to him slowly regain his strength. With a significant balance still available in the account, Gabriel decided to take action. He knew he had to do something to protect his mother and the farm that was his inheritance. Thus, he hired a renowned private detective to thoroughly investigate Derek's shady activities. "I want you to uncover everything you can about Derek," Gabriel instructed the detective, his voice firm and determined, but with a sense of urgency. "He has been acting suspiciously, and my mother is in danger." The detective, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and an air of authority, nodded understandingly. "You did the right thing by hiring me, Gabriel. I will find out what's going on." After weeks of meticulous investigation, the detective returned with disturbing news. He had discovered that Derek was manipulating Eliza, using drugs to confuse her and make her appear disoriented. Furthermore, he was systematically embezzling funds from the farm. Your mother's blood tests revealed high levels of sedatives. And here, the detective said, handing Gabriel a stack of documents, are the financial records showing the suspicious transfers Derek has been making. He's stealing from you. The revelations hit Gabriel like a sledgehammer. The depth of Derek's betrayal was far worse than he had ever imagined. Armed with all the evidence collected by the detective, Gabriel went to the clinic where his mother was. Eliza, still weak but fully conscious, listened attentively as Gabriel explained everything he had uncovered about Derek. "I'm so sorry, Mother," Gabriel said, holding her hands with a firm grip, "but you need to see this evidence." He then showed her the documents and explained every detail of the detective's findings. Eliza fell silent for a long moment after Gabriel finished speaking. Her expression was one of disbelief, shock, and finally, sadness. "I can't believe I fell for his manipulations," she murmured, her eyes filled with tears. "I made a terrible mistake, Gabriel." Though emotional himself, Gabriel encouraged his mother to take action. "Now that we know the truth, Mother, we can stop Derek." Days later, Eliza, still in recovery but determined, left the rehabilitation clinic. She, Gabriel, and a team of police officers went to the farm, an imposing sight in the light of dawn. There, they found Derek, sitting at the dining table, enjoying a lavish breakfast, oblivious to the storm that was about to descend upon him. "Derek," Eliza said, her voice stronger than ever, "you're under arrest." The police stepped forward, handcuffing a bewildered Derek and leading him away from the farm. Justice was finally being served. After a long and challenging recovery, Gregory was finally discharged from the hospital. Throughout his stay, Gabriel had been by his side, assisting him with whatever was needed and offering him not just a friend but a family. On the day Gregory was set to leave the hospital, Gabriel took him to the farm, revealing to him the majestic property that had been his family's home for generations. "Gregory, I would like you to come and live with us on the farm," Gabriel said with sincerity in his voice. "Here, you can live comfortably, peacefully, and with dignity." The offer surprised Gregory, who had always been a man of strong and proud principles. He didn't want to be a burden to Gabriel, despite all the affection he had for the young man. "I appreciate the offer, Gabriel," Gregory said, with a hesitant look. "But I don't want to be just a guest in your home. I don't want to feel like I'm living off your generosity." Gabriel smiled, understanding Gregory's pride. He had an alternative proposition, hoping that Gregory would accept it. "I understand, Gregory, and that's why I'm offering you a position here. As the caretaker," Gabriel proposed. "You will have your own responsibilities and the freedom to take care of the farm as if it were your own. And, of course, you'll have your own house here, where you can live comfortably and with dignity. What do you say?" Gregory's gaze softened, and he nodded. "I appreciate it, Gabriel. I believe this proposition fits perfectly with what I need. And I'm excited to start this new chapter of my life." And so, on that vast property, under the golden evening light, a new journey was about to begin for both Gregory and Gabriel. And so it was. Gregory began living on the vast farm, taking on the role of caretaker. He tended to the expansive land with a passion that could only be matched by his dedication to the vegetables that once grew in his modest backyard. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and eventually, Gregory realized that he had found something he had never had before, a true home. Not just a house or a place to sleep, but a home where he was respected and loved. Gabriel, on the other hand, saw life bloom in a new direction. With Gregory by his side, he not only had someone he loved like a father but also a friend and confidant. They laughed together, shared stories, and lived each day as a blessing. And the legacy of Eliza, the Marshall farm, began to flourish under Gabriel's firm hand. He became the leader he had always known he could be, guiding the farm and its workers with kindness and resilience. The great adversity they had faced in their previous lives became a mere echo as they settled into the tranquility of their days on the farm. And in the end, they both found what they had always sought, a family, a home, and a purpose in their lives. In Gregory's words, on a particularly starry night as they shared a cup of tea on the terrace, "Life has a strange way of fitting together, doesn't it, Gabriel?" To which Gabriel simply smiled and replied, "Yes, Gregory. Life truly does." And with that confirmation of their unbreakable bond, they knew they would face any challenge that came their way, together. And so, as the sun set on the horizon and the sky filled with stars, the vast Marshall farm was not just a silent witness to their lives, but a tapestry woven with the threads of their shared love, resilience, and hope. They were, ultimately, a family, united not only by blood but also by heart. And so they would remain, for all the days to come. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm sure the next story that's coming up will also touch your heart. Until next time.